Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Billy. Welcome to the Horse Frog Podcast, home of frequent diversions and arguments about the merits of Ewoks.
Today we will be discussing Book 1, Chapter 2 of Gardens of the Moon, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen.
The podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. This is not a book review, and it's not intended to be a replacement to reading the books, because know that we think this is the greatest series that's ever been told, so we're not going to be providing literary critique.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
And a quick warning, today's episode will contain descriptions of violence, and it's not recommended for children.
I do need to make a correction before we get into this episode today. Already, I'm falling on a sword. We did do a little segment on pronunciation when we were going through Book 1, Chapter 1 of Gardens of the Moon. Already, we're having some fun with the pronunciation of Malazan. So for the prologue and Book 1, Chapter 1, I was pronouncing it Malazan, not Malazan. I went back and did some due diligence and listened to an interview with Steven Erikson. He, in fact, does say Malazan. Now, the confusion came because some of his interviewers, they'll pronounce it Malazan, which I'm used to pronouncing, or
Right.
Malazan. So, and he doesn't really correct them. So it does kind of give a little
and
confusion.
And I thought it was Malazan as well, because a young lady he was talking to said it multiple times, and he reiterated and doubled down on it. But then he mentioned the Isle of Malaz, and that's what I started to call it. I would go with his syllables, but add the Malazan, not Malazan.
Mm-hmm.
It's Malazan.
Yeah. For the rest of this, I'm going to be saying Malazan, and we'll leave it at that. So I apologize for the confusion.
Mr. Erikson,
that's the direction we're going to go.
We are great fans. If you wish to call us and correct us, I will provide my number for you personally.
Yes. Thank you. Billy, take it easy, bro.
No, I'm serious. I would love to talk to that boy. I'm dying. I'm hoping.
Oh, I thought you were talking about other people. Never mind. I take it back. Okay.
No, it's a please call.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
I'm available.
Yeah.
I'm available. Yo, Steve, call us.
Chapter 2 begins in 1163 Burns' sleep. This takes place 2 years after the end of Chapter 1. We are going to cover this part of the story in sequence. The book begins with the aftermath of the Battle of Pale first. I would like to flesh out some of the details before we get to the events of the battle so that when we're discussing things taking place, it makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
Before the chapter, there's an excerpt from Call to Shadow by Felicin. Some good details are in there. With the coming of the Maranth, the tide turned, and like ships in a harbor, the free cities were swept under imperial seas. The war entered the 12th year, the year of the shattered moon and its sudden spawn of deathly rain and black-winged promise. 2 cities remained to contest the Malazan onslaught. One stalwart, proud banners beneath Dark's powerful wing. The other divided without an army, bereft of allies. The strong city fell first.
I want to interject real quick here. I have never, ever, ever, ever been a fan of poetry. But the poetry he does at the beginning of some of his chapters or some of these sections, man, some of that stuff really gets on me. I mean, in a good way. I mean, it really touches me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. The imagery is really strong in this one in particular, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And it's like I said, I've never been a person moved by poetry other than his. And for some reason, I think we both agreed he's touched us in ways that we never thought we'd be touched in books before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He gets me right to the core.
Right. Right to the core.
Yeah.
Makes me get water in my systems.
I do love that.
Yeah. I do love that.
We are introduced to Tattersail and Callet, both sorcerers in the Second Army's mage cadre. Tattersail is described as being heavy-set, having some bulk, and having many pillows of soft flesh for Callet to get lost in. Callet is thin, and the contrast between the two interests me. This is another reason I like Erikson as a writer. The people definitely feel real. Tattersail could have been some lithe figure, or it had not been mentioned at all.
Oh,
And
yes.
the humanity in this world, it does a good job of reflecting real people.
Yeah, these are some of the most real characters I've ever read in any series, period.
It is mentioned that Khallet is 100 years old. The people in this world are capable of reaching extremely old ages. And I think it is primarily the mages that reach those ages.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I believe that they're using it. Now, I don't know if this is a Garden of the Moonism, but the null treatments are mentioned. And I can't remember if that's specifically from the first or later on, because that's why I believe that's why when we introduce him here, Dujek has gone through Denol treatments, is why he looks so decent for his age.
Okay, and that is the Warren of Healing.
Yes. It just kind of reminds me of the spice from Dune. It adds to your life. It gives with one and takes with the other, but it does give you some. Most folks tend to live longer because of it, though. The geriatric spice.
Don't get me derailed already.
Sorry for you Dune heads out there. We both love Dune.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm thinking of quotes from Dune. You got me off guard here. All right, here we go.
Sorry.
The two have been sleeping together. This is Tattersail and Khallet. They've been sleeping together for 4 months, and we can see Tattersail is using mental gymnastics to avoid attributing any serious emotions to the relationship.
Yeah, I'm with you. She's doing all these gymnastics because she's in love with that boy. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, she just kept referring to it as a diversion, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. They receive a magical summons from another sorcerer in the cadre named Hairlock. As they leave Khallet's tent, Tattersail stops and looks up at the dark shape of Moon's spawn hanging in the air 1.3 miles above the city of Pale. Pale is located centrally on the continent of Genabakis. It is south of the Revi Plain, east of the cloud forest containing the Maranth, and north of the Talon Mountains. Moonspawn is an enormous mountain of basalt, ragged in appearance, suspended through some form of sorcery or other method unknown to us at this time. It has been rotating in place the whole time it has been stationed over Pale. Moonspawn is the home of the Tist Andi, an elder race who you will recall when we were talking about Topper are onyx-skinned and have white hair. It is mentioned that Moonspawn is home to the most powerful enemy the Malazan Empire has ever faced. I'm sorry, every time I got to say it, I got to think.
Okay.
It's like I got to self-correct every time.
I love it.
The fact that this fortress is floating in the air makes it impossible to besiege. Additionally, it is mobile, so that makes things increasingly difficult. Tattersail notes that even Lassine's army of Talan Imas, who have the ability to travel as dust in the wind, are not able to, or perhaps more important, not willing to assault the fortress. Now, the Talan Imas are another elder race. We will discuss them in further detail later in this book, and they leave quite the impression.
Yes. In this book, there's so many favored races to me that I love so many people from all the different races, and the Talan Imas are some of my favorites because of something that happens later in this book, with one in particular that runs through the whole book. But I love the Talan Imas; they're interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, I want to talk more about them, but we'll just have to wait. Yeah. I mean, it's simply the fact that they can travel as dust. People are like, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah, what's that even mean?
Well, we'll explain more later.
Yeah, later.
We're not trying to be cagey. We just don't want to give you too much too soon.
Yes.
Pale's wizards had found a powerful ally when the Tist Andi chose to defend them. The Empire has had dealings with the Lord of Moonspawn before, during the time of the Emperor, but for some unknown reason, Moonspawn had retreated. No one living still knew why, just one of 1,000 secrets the Emperor took to his watery grave. I would like to know what the prevailing thought is on how the Emperor was killed by Lassine.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, given they're talking about him going to his watery grave.
Yeah. And what's funny, even reading the books, I don't recall. I mean, even reading that first one, that's kind of, it hints at this. It doesn't really say exactly, does it?
Are you talking about
Knight of Knives by Esselmont?
No, I don't recall.
I don't recall it specifically spelling out what happened to them.
Not really. I think it was like kind of peripheral stuff going on with all the other characters.
Yeah, that's what I remembered.
Yeah. And again, we got to be careful what we give away here,
Yeah.
The reappearance of Moon's spawn came as a surprise to the Empire. 6 legions of the sorceress Tist-Andi had descended from Moon's spawn and are being led by a warlord named Caladan Brood in opposition to the Malazan 5th Army. Every time, dude.
Well, we work so hard to call it Malazan because we've been calling it Malazan for 10 years. It's brutal. It's tough. Hey, Ralph Lister, I hold you to blame for this.
No.
I love you guys. I love you guys, but Lister, come on.
They probably recorded the whole thing and they're like, this was supposed to be pronounced this way. It's like, yeah, it's too late. We just need to roll with it.
I guess Erikson was kind of pulling the dude moment like far out. Okay, I guess we got him made. All right, dude. It's like he's probably pretty happy about that.
All right, now 6 legions. For scale comparison, a Roman legion numbers 4,000 to 8,000 soldiers. So we are talking anywhere from 16,000 to 32,000 Tist-Andi if Erikson is using this scale.
Yeah.
That gives you an idea of just kind of the size of some of these forces we're talking about here.
Yeah.
That's a big force.
Yeah, and I'm assuming and the way that this place is positioned, I mean, we know later on, but I'm assuming these are whatever these Tist-Andi are, that they're elites. That would be my presumption.
You know, they're so old for the most part.
Yeah.
Even the young ones are old by comparison to humans. They pick up skills over time. So yes, if you're using the humans as a scale of comparison, the average Tist-Andi would be considered an elite human. I would say.
Yeah, I would assume. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just like you said, the experience alone. Yeah.
Caladan Brood is also commanding a force known as the Crimson Guard. The Crimson Guard is mentioned but isn't really fleshed out in the Erikson books. Esselmont's storyline fills in a lot of the plot threads that are spun in the core series of the books. Rest assured, we will cover those books as well, because they are tying up some pretty significant things that would otherwise be plot holes in the core story. But I think they intended to kind of tag team this for the whole time.
Yeah, beautifully, by the way, on both parts.
Yeah. The combined forces under Caladan Brood have been battling the Malazan 5th. They pushed the 5th back from their path along the northeast edge of the Rivi Plain on Genebakis and bogged them down in Black Dog Forest for the past 4 years. This campaign has taken a huge toll on the 5th, and some of the stories that you hear out of Black Dog, it's bad. It's like swamp fighting.
It is. Yeah, and that's one of those things that they hint at, but we never ever. They don't ever go into Black Dog, but it's one of those things that makes it so intriguing because we don't ever really talk about Black Dog Forest, but it must have been bad.
Yeah, passingly, it's just bad stuff. And then there's some of the characters that come out of there. Oh my God! Yeah. I mean, we don't get introduced to them to like the 6th book, but man,
what are they? Are they the Bowls? Is that what their names are? I love them, dude. Those guys are great.
Crump too.
Yeah,
I think he was
out of their mind.
Yeah. Some crazy people come out of this. I mean, they're swamp folk. What do you expect?
Yeah, yeah. They're like the Cajuns.
That's what I was thinking.
That's exactly who these guys are. That's exactly who they are.
Mm-hmm. The mysterious Lord of Moon's spawn has yet to enter the fray in this conflict. Tattersail and her cadre do not have the power to assault Moonspawn, thus the siege of Pale has ground to a halt. The Bridgeburners have been trying to undermine Pale's city walls for the last 3 years. That's a heck of a long time to be underground.
Yeah. Ooh, yes.
Yeah. The Malazan camp encircling the city of Pale surrounds Tattersail and Kallet as they walk to attend the meeting with High Fist Dujek One Arm. One quick anecdote. The Malazan soldiers are described sitting around braziers filled with burning horse dung. After I read this, I went camping up in Oklahoma. We're in Texas, so we went up to Oklahoma. And there were bison roaming free in this park that we visited, and there was a bunch of bison dung all over the place.
Awesome.
And we used some of the dried up dung in our campfire, and it worked great. I got that idea from these books.
Yeah. I have been curious about that too. I knew that it burned, but I was just curious about the smell. I know that horse dung while not the best smell, it's not entirely dreadful if unburnt, mind you.
Hmm.
When you smell farms and stuff, it's not an entirely unpleasant smell.
Yeah. I think we just look for like the really desiccated stuff, super dry.
Okay.
And so it was
Right.
at that point, it barely had any smell at all.
Cool.
Generally speaking, yeah, if it's fresh or, like a couple weeks old and it's not really that dry, yeah,
Right.
it does kind of have that smell, right?
Right.
But yeah, once it really dries out, it didn't, it just was like a nice clean heat, not a lot of smoke.
Cool.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
kind of like dried
Nice. Okay.
grass, really.
Right. Because that's really what it is more than anything. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's what they eat. So
Yeah.
very cool. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, man.
Hmm. As Tattersail approaches Dujek's command tent, she is saluted by the Marine guarding the entrance. She notes that he looks nervous. Tattersail asks him if he is from the 7th Regiment. Without meeting her gaze, he nods and confirms he is in the 3rd Squad. She notes she thought he looked familiar and to give her regards to Sergeant Rusty. She asks if there is something in the air, and he responds, "High in the air, sorceress, high as they come." This is a coded message indicating someone of great importance is awaiting Tattersail and Callet in the tent. Tattersail says she thought she smelled him, giving us the indication that she is sensing this individual's presence through sorcery. The aspects of the Warrens have flavors that people who are sensitive to them can interpret.
Yes.
She thanks the Marine, to which he responds, "Always an even trade."
I
And
love that.
we need to dive in on this concept.
Yeah. Yes.
When we think of the Malazan military, based on what we have seen so far, the respect conveyed is merit-based. Previously, we've touched on the nobles in the command structure and how they're frowned upon by the general soldier, right?
Yeah.
More often than not, they end up with a knife in their back because they're incompetent. But
Yes.
throughout the books, over and over, you will see that people will earn the respect of the soldiers based off of merit. And
Yes.
that's yet another reason why I love these books, because that's the kind of world I want to live in, right? Where
Yeah.
people are
Absolutely.
recognized for their contribution. It's not
Yeah.
just given to people. You have to earn it.
Yes.
Mm.
Well, I think this is one of the joys of this series because first and foremost, as we talked about in the last episode, where we talked about how he builds this world,
Hmm.
To have a world that is so thought out like this, this is world building in older days of fantasy was more of that's a throwaway idea. It was all characters. And then some people get lost in the world building and don't build characters. Man, he does both. He does beautiful characters along with beautiful world building. And this is really I'm with you. This is one of my favorite worlds.
Hmm.
And especially because I love this, I love these interactions with the grunts and some other people, especially when you've earned their respect, buddy.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think what really, really endears me to a lot of these Marines is the comedy that ensues because of some of the shenanigans they get up to. I mean, it is ridiculous, some of this stuff. I'm cracking up sometimes. Most of the time, that's not the case in a lot of these more serious fantasy books.
Yes.
I don't remember ever cracking up in Dune.
I didn't crack up in Dune.
Or Gunslinger.
Almost any. I laughed a lot at Gunslinger because Eddie.
Oh, okay.
Oh, but not the first book of Gunslinger. I'm sorry, it's not a particularly good book, but man, when you read Drawing of the Three, my word, that there are some of the funniest. King has some. King is the only other guy that's made me just break down crying, laughing. I don't get upset with but Erikson has made me cry, because of loss and loss of people that we love.
Beauty too, though,
and and beauty and laughter. I mean, he's hit me on every cylinder. A lot of these guys hit me on one or two or three. This guy fires on all. Yeah. I mean, he fires on all 12 cylinders, man.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to describe it. Yeah, that's good. That's good. For him. Yeah. A lot of them have one or the other, but not all of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this has got it all. World, people, man, and peoples. I should say peoples, because there's tons of fascinating peoples that we love. You and I love multiple people from all the races.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Especially one in particular I know. Carson.
Oh, man, don't get me started. I was thinking about him today. A little bit too early. Well, let's just yeah.
Too early. Sorry.
Back to this interaction with Tattersail and this Marine. There is no reason for her to acknowledge this Marine. Yes, she does. She even knows who his sergeant is by name. And it shows a certain level of attentiveness and care towards the average soldier that the soldiers recognize. Now, when it comes to the statement, always an even trade, we have to understand the relationship between the military and the sorcerers.
Yes.
I'm going to refer to them as sorcerers, mages, kind of interchangeably.
Yeah.
Just,
Yes.
I'm not sure that if there's one that's preferred over the other, but just assume that I'm meaning the same thing.
And if I'm not mistaken, the book they never dial down on anything.
No, I don't think they do.
It's whatever the locals. It's usually whatever locals call them.
Yeah, a lot of the times it's like shamanistic or like the wax witch or some type of thing that you would be used to seeing in our world sometimes. Like
Absolutely,
like a shoulder woman or something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Magic wielders in this universe are capable of wielding absolutely devastating power, as we will soon discuss. The soldiers look to the cadre of mages assigned to their army to protect them. In turn, the soldiers will protect the mages with their lives. The respect goes both ways, and it must be earned. Not all mages in the cadre would receive the same response Tattersail has received from this Marine.
Yeah.
Tattersail is thinking about how the Second Army has been doing this for years, insisting she is family to them. It is noted that the Second Army is the last remaining intact army that remains from the Emperor's reign. We can deduce from this statement that the Third Army, which was mentioned in the prologue, is no more. As a reminder, the Third was referred to as the Emperor's Own, and that they were the elite soldiers of the Empire. The Bridge Burners were in the Third, and Whiskey Jack was a commander, outranking Dujek at that time.
Yep.
Dujek is in command of the Second Army now with the rank of High Fist, which is pretty much the highest you can go in the military command structure in this universe.
Yeah.
Or the Malazan Empire.
So he's kind of like the regional governor of the military. Is what would you call a High Fist, something like that?
In some cases, yes, I think that's true.
Yeah.
But when it comes to assaulting a continent, they don't really have like a base of power that they're reigning from. Like if we were on Seven Cities, yes, I believe there's a High Fist stationed in Erin, which is kind of the capital of the Malazan Empire on that continent. But given they're trying to subjugate this continent now, the High Fist is kind of more of a military general, like a 4-star general, would you say?
He's our Patton. Yeah, he's our Patton. Yeah. Dujek is definitely Patton, dude.
Are you really?
But not so harsh.
I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
He's not as harsh, but it's like, he's our Patton kind of.
Okay.
I mean that with respect. I mean,
I'm not familiar enough with the individual personalities of a lot of the generals to be able to say who would be the most apt in this case. So I'll have to take your word for it.
Well, like I said, Patton was apparently real harsh on his own people, but he was a battlefield general, and he would be in there first with them.
Okay.
So that commanded his troops' respect. Because of the fact that it didn't matter that they were shooting, he'd be there if he needed to.
So it's like a Teddy Roosevelt type character charging up the hill.
Yeah. Yes, very much so. Recklessly, yes.
On that note, okay, here's one of our famous diversions. I was reading about Teddy Roosevelt because he was always so gung-ho to go to war. And he had 3 sons, I believe. World War I rolls around, and his sons go off to war. And his youngest son ends up dying. I believe he was a pilot. And this just messed him up so bad. Like he shut down after that. He would just sit in the room. Have you seen the last Kingsman movie that came out? Yeah. So it was similar type situation where Ralph Fiennes, like after, well, I don't want to ruin the story, but for those of you that have seen it, something happens, he loses somebody, and then he kind of just sits around and mopes for a while, and I thought it was interesting that Teddy Roosevelt was so gung-ho to go to war until he lost his own child, and then he shut down. And I was curious if he ever reevaluated his past convictions.
I think he probably did. I know some things about him, but it's more along his life as a Christian and later life. So I think that would explain why he probably turned that route, because he was looking for answers, probably.
Okay.
Over why he would have lost his son in this, and because I knowing he was that gung ho, his sons were probably like, "Yeah, let's go."
Yeah,
and I think he was probably wholeheartedly behind him, and then when he lost one, it just, especially the youngest one, apparently that would really do it to you. Apparently,
yeah. All right, back to the topic at hand. As Tattersail enters the tent, she is immediately assaulted by an emanation of power that is anathema to her own. Her and Khaled see that Lassine's high mage, Tashrin, is standing with his hands on Dujek's map table. Though he remains stationary, his robe appears to ripple on its own. The two joke with each other, asking if they think this is a studied pose and that Taishran couldn't read a battle map if his life depended on it. They certainly don't seem to have much respect or fondness for him already.
No, not at all.
A voice comes from the corner saying, "Today we work." And Tattersail notes the unnatural darkness enwreathing the chair in the corner. The voice is Hairlock's. This is the power that is anathema to Tattersails. This is never officially confirmed, but it is suspected that Hairlock commands the Warren of Darkness, Rashan. Tattersail commands the Warren of Light, Thyr. They are directly in opposition to one another. Hairlock begins to release his spell, and his shape begins to form, starting with a row of yellow teeth.
It's kind of like the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland.
Yes. His flat, scarred brow and shaved pate are covered in sweat, which is not out of the ordinary for him. He has a mashed, misaligned nose and small, dark eyes. His head is held in a way that conveys smug detachment combined with contempt. And you can tell right off the bat, we're not meant to like this guy. Picture the sweaty white man we've been alluding to in our prior episodes of excruciating detail.
What's bad is, like, I'm going to go down the rabbit hole in this. When me and KP were watching a movie yesterday, and I was showing her the old Hellraiser movies. And you want to talk about a sweaty white man movie? There's like a lot of sweaty white guys in that first one. I forgot how sweaty that movie was. And it makes you want to take a shower afterwards too. It's like, oh,
that type of sweaty white dude.
Yeah. It's 8mm sweaty white guy.
It's not like Top Gun volleyball sweaty white guy.
Right. It's I got to take a shower. I can't believe I said that. What's the matter with me? It's like,
yeah. Tattersail tells Hairlock he's lucky she didn't decide to sit in that chair. And I love that comment from her. And it shows her comfort with her own body, right? There's no mental condition related to her size. She's willing to joke about what would happen if she sat on someone. You know?
Yep. Probably flatten that boy out, I'm assuming. It's like...
Hairlock retorts, asking if Tattersail remembers work since it was what she used to do before she started sleeping with Callet, before she went soft. I wanted to ask you about this. Do you think Hairlock calling her soft is related to her attachment to Callet or her attachment to the Second Army, her feeling responsible for their well-being?
You know, at first I would like to say it's both, but I think it's probably from her attachment to the men in the Second Army.
Yeah.
More than her attachment to Callet here.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think that's kind of expected sometimes, especially if you've been hanging out in a place camped out for 2.5 years, because they've been at a stalemate. What, 2.5, 3 years here at Pale?
3 years at least. Yeah, because that's how long the bridge burners were underground. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. So 3 years. So it's like that's a lot of time to kill if you're not doing anything.
Right. The counterpoint to that would be Hairlock isn't really endeared to anybody, right? So it just really depends on the person.
Yeah. It's just like everyone else, you know, certain people command respect through coolness and some through fear.
Correct.
He's more of more of the command through fear. Better to be fear than love. Seems to be
until a knife finds its way in your back.
Right. Did we explain the fact about the knives in the back is actually, you know, that comes from the people. I mean, that comes from the people under their command. Eventually, they earn the disdain, and somebody just slips in and slips a knife in their back. You're like, whoops, lost another one.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely be touching more on that. I think that's a recurring theme in this chapter.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Callet fires back at Hairlock, saying, "Lonely Hairlock, should I tell you that the camp followers demand double the coin from you?" That's a sick burn right there.
Oh, that's tough. Yeah. That's rough. Brutal.
Enter Dujek. And finally, we get to meet him. We've heard about him several times. He enters, and it is noted that the soap of his morning shave is still clotting the hair around his ears. Callet throws him a handkerchief, and Dujek grabs it, growling, "Again? Damn that barber. I swear he does it on purpose." He wipes the soap off, balls up the handkerchief, and throws it back in Callet's lap. And I love the way they start out with Dujek. You know, I laughed out loud reading it. It's lovely.
Yeah. Well, and this is one that I know that we both agree on. That's the introduction to him with the soap on his ear. I mean, it endears him to you because it makes him human.
Yeah.
You know, yes, he is our commander on the ground, but at the same time, he's also obviously liked by most of the people that work under him. And there's a little give and take with some humor because Callet just I love how he just kind of tossed it at him like, "There you go." And it's
Yeah,
like,
he's cool enough with
so,
him to just have a handkerchief thrown at him, right?
yeah, yeah.
Tattersail notes the smell of soap and cinnamon water. She has attributed that smell to Dujek and the security, stability, and sanity he has brought to the Second Army. Dujek is described as being 79 years old, but looking 50. The last 3 years of passivity in the siege have allowed him to rejuvenate. I was thinking about this, and I was like, our president's 79. Isn't he? Somewhere in there?
Yeah, but my dad. It's funny because we just celebrated my dad's 80th,
Okay.
and my dad will get up in a tree with gear and a chainsaw and still climb it and still cut that stuff down. I can't do that. So my father is as strong as he has always been physically.
Okay.
And some people are blessed like that.
Yeah.
He's one of them. Like I said, there's a lot of these guys that you're like, wow, you're just as awesome and pardon my mouth, but just as badass as you were when I was a kid. It's like, no, he's still just that way.
Yeah, I remember I met one guy at Fry's. Generally, when you think of people in this age bracket, they're not very computer savvy for the most part. They computers were introduced late in their lives. This guy comes in, he was like 93 or something. And he was the most energetic 90-year-old I've ever met. And he knew a lot. I think he was a Mac guy, but he just was so sharp. I was like, man, I want to be this guy when I'm 90 something years old. I mean, he was just on it. It was crazy. Just like his energy levels.
I'm praying like I'm like my dad.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Okay, so back to Dujek. He is missing his left arm and is roughly 5.5 feet tall. His posture makes him appear taller. Probably.
I forget he's so short.
I know, it's crazy. It's like he's older than I thought he was, and he's shorter than I thought he was.
Yeah.
Just because of his character. It's
yeah. I picture this big old guy.
Yeah, like it kind of the uncle from Braveheart, Uncle Argyle.
Yeah,
that's who I kind of picture him as.
Madman. Yes. Yeah.
I don't know what his name is, but
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, but
he's that hard old man. He's
wait,
hard.
No. I mean, was it Argyle? No,
is he the guy that loses?
No. Argyle is Brian Cox. No, it wasn't Argyle. It was
Oh.
No, hold on. It's the other. You know who I'm talking about. What is that Scottish guy's name? His name's James Cosmo.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So when I envision Dujek, I think of James Cosmo.
Yeah, dude.
So recently, you would recognize him as he was in Game of Thrones. As he is Jeor Mormont, so the elder
the
Mormont.
Guy I was thinking about. He's that in Braveheart. Did he lose an arm or a leg himself in that? I think he loses an arm.
Yeah, he got shot by an arrow, didn't he? And so they like hold him down.
Oh yeah,
it was Mel Gibson's friend's dad.
Yes.
In Braveheart, that's who he was. Yeah, he gets shot by an arrow, and then he's like drinking, and then like they're holding him down. Yeah, and he they pull the arrow out, they cauterize the wound, and he gets up and starts attacking everybody.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's who I've always envisioned him.
I see that. I kind of thought the same thing, but no, he's a little bitty fella. Yeah. But he's probably just as mean.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think this guy was very tall
just
either.
As mean.
Yeah, definitely. Dujek had sent Hairlock to go speak with the bridge burners in the tunnels to check on the status of undermining the city walls. Hairlock spoke with Fiddler and found they may be able to reach the walls within 6 or 7 years. Not very optimistic on the outlook there. The bridge burners were assigned the task directly from the capital. Interesting. Tattersail notes the idiocy of this and how pointless it is. She had provided a report stating it was a waste of time and sent it to the imperial court. When she questions if anyone ever read it, Callet jokes it is still on the way there. The camel is still swimming. And this gets a grunt out of Dujek, which is as close as we'll get to a laugh from him. The geology of the region is noted as a glacial dump, a rock pile plugging a crevice of unfound depths. Dujek gets the conversation back on track, notifying them that there are members of the Claw in Pale, sent to assassinate the wizards located in the city.
So, yeah, I love that these people are revealed that they're already here. And but I love that we know that the Claw do not only kill foreign enemies of the Empire, but also Malazans, who she may deem a threat.
Yeah, the cadre really perks up since the Claw are capable of attacking enemies as well as Malazans.
Like, who are they here for?
Right?
It's like, Oh,
Yeah, Khaled wants to know if they're there for any other reason, and Dujek tells him they will have to go through him first.
another great Dujek moment. I love that. That he says, "You'll go through me first."
Yeah, and this is a statement directed at Taishren, since he is in the tent and is commanding the claw locally. Dujek then informs the cadre that they will be attacking Moon's spawn within the hour. As soon as this is mentioned, Taishren turns to face the group, greeting them. Hairlock snorts and tells him to keep the melodrama to a minimum. I mean, it's like he's just sitting there probably waiting for them to get to the point before he just epically turns around. I mean, they don't really paint Taishren very well.
No, they don't.
This book, you know?
They really don't.
Taishren ignores Hairlock and continues, telling the cadre that the Empress has lost her patience with Moon's spawn. Dujek counters with, "The Empress is scared enough to hit first and hit hard. Tell it plain, Magicker. This is your front line you're talking to here. Show some respect, damn it." And you can see why people are loyal to Dujek.
Absolutely.
You know, he doesn't play around.
No, he doesn't. No. He doesn't like his people being used. And if you're going to use it, if you're going to use them, tell them straight up. And I appreciate that.
Taishren shrugs and continues, telling the cadre that they, along with Taishren and 3 other high mages, will attack Moon's spawn within the hour. The belief is most of the Tist-Andi are out fighting the Malazan 5th in Black Dog Forest, and only the Lord remains in Moonspawn. For the last 3 years, the Empire has been held in check by the Lord's presence alone, and they are now going to test his mettle. Dujek adds that he hopes the Lord has been bluffing this whole time. The past experience of the Empire and Moonspawn is leading them to hope that he will retreat without a confrontation. Dujek asks if there are any questions, and Khaled jokes, "How soon can I get a transfer?" You know, on my first read through, I didn't really pay much attention to Khaled. On this one, he seems really cool. And it's too bad that we didn't get to see more of him in the books. You know?
I know it, because I'm like you. There's some of these people you meet and you're like, this guy's going to be real cool. And you're like, whoops.
Yeah.
He was.
He's going to be real cool for about 10 more minutes.
Right. And I agree. I wish we could have got to know Khaled a little bit more.
Tattersail asks what is known about the Lord of Moon's spawn. Taishren claims scant little, a Tist-Andi and an Archmage. On a side note, I was unsure whether it's Archmage or Archmage. So I did a little digging, and there is a huge argument online about this. And I'm just going to stick with Archmage, because it's like it could go either way. It's just
I didn't realize this was a discussion, because I would have thought Archmage, but I think of Archangels. So
yeah, that's the argument. Is like there's a language precedent, but then there's also the usage in specific cases. I don't know, but I just it was no clearer to me after reading several things about it.
Did it make you more confused?
What I came across was there was some controversy about the pronunciation in one of the Blizzard games. I think it was Warcraft 3, where it was mentioned, and then also World of Warcraft. And the developers and writers for the game did this same research, and they also were unclear on what to do it as. And I forget which one they chose. I think it was, they might have said Archmage in the game, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, there's camps on both sides.
Right.
You know, and they both make solid points.
Well, you don't want to piss off the Nerdgentia.
No, well, that's the problem, is you're always going to piss somebody off. I'm just going to pick a side. If you have a case to make, contact at horsefrogproductions.com. I'll hear you out. If it's a compelling enough case, I will change my position on this. I'm not married to Archmage.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just choosing that one for now.
We got to settle on something that works for me. Yeah. We're just arbitrarily calling that there's no real, it's arbitrary. It's okay. We understand this about ourselves. And if you don't like it, well, I'm sorry.
No, we are willing to hear people out.
Yes, we want to hear you out. We do.
Yeah. I mean,
I was not going to say Malazan.
Well, let me cite a specific example. You have an issue with Ewoks, and a very strong case was brought before you in favor of the Ewoks, and I think they convince you fairly well of the merits of the Ewoks. Well. Yeah,
I agree with their merits.
Yeah, okay.
Especially in a meritocracy-based world of this, they would be great here. and their merit would be immediately wiped out by the first time that they saw any real mages. We would all be wiped out by the time we first saw any of these guys' mages. I'm not saying I'm any better.
You're going to get another email.
Oh.
You're going to get another
sorry.
email.
I'm sorry, people. I love y'all. I love the audience. This is not meant to insult. This is we can all have different opinions, please. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful.
All right. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back.
Okay, sorry.
Tattersail asks what is known about the Lord of Moonspawn. Tayshrin claims scant little, a Tist Andy, and an Archmage. Hairlock leans forward and spits on the floor. This is a challenge in Seven Cities culture. More details on his Seven Cities background will come in the future. Hairlock tells Tayshrin he thinks he can be a little bit more specific than simply a Tist Andy and an Archmage. Tayshrin says perhaps the Archmage of the Tist Andy,
Right.
also criticizing the gesture of spitting on the floor, calling it primitive, quaint, and tasteless. Hairlock notes the Tist Andy are the first children of Mother Dark. The Lord of Moonspawn is the Master Archmage. The reports coming down to Dujek from Black Dog are indicating the use of Kurald Galain, and that Tayshrin knows his name as well as Hairlock does. A note on Kurald Galain, this is referred to as Elder Magic. In this universe, magic in its most unrefined form is chaotic. When the aspects of magic were introduced, they were less refined than those that come later. Kurald Galain is an older version of dark magic and is pure darkness. Rashan is the aspect of dark available to humans now. We saw Hairlock using this to conceal himself when Tattersail entered the tent. Now, here's a quote regarding Rashan. The art of Rashan is found in the tension that binds the games of light, yet its aspect is one of dissipation, the creation of shadow and of dark, although in this case the dark is not absolute, such as is the aspect of the ancient warren Kurald Galain. No, this dark is particular, for it exists not through the absence of light, but by virtue of being seen. Yeah, so that's an interesting distinction between the two, right? One is pure darkness.
Very, very interesting.
And the other one is the absence of light.
This was a weird one as we get later into the series and they talk about the dark, that I didn't realize the dark was like the Mother Dark's dark is just there is no light. I mean, but they see okay in their world. But for us, we wouldn't be able to make it around there. I don't know if we could make it around there or not. Is it that kind of dark, or is it? Can you still see, but there's nothing to see? I have a hard time sometimes, and this is what we're here for, folks. The Warrens are interesting, to put it mildly. So this is interesting talk.
We wouldn't be able to see.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It'd just be pitch. We'd be pitch black and couldn't see a thing. That's what I was thinking it was. We'd be blind.
Yeah.
Okay.
That must have messed them up when Father Light showed up. Big time.
Dude.
Can you imagine?
Well, see,
your whole life,
but
you lived in pure darkness, and then light shows up all of a sudden, you know?
Right. But they've built societies and everything here in the dark. I mean, that were advanced societies before. At least that's the impression I got by the time that the light came, and it's like, whoa, what's this?
Yeah. This whole interplay between the light, dark, and then shadow, because of that, is really interesting. The books will delve into this. I mean, it's a significant amount of content in the books.
Yes.
This whole concept. Because just as there are children of dark, there are children of light, and there are children of shadow as well.
That's right.
So you can think on that a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, some really interesting characters.
Yeah, love it. And we're just dipping our toes in. I love it.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, this description of Rashan also provides us with some visibility into how Hairlock could have known this additional information about the Lord of Moonspawn that the other mages in the cadre do not.
Yeah, that's true.
Tayshrin finally gets upset and snaps that he knows nothing of the sort and threatens Hairlock, stating he will look into his source of information. Hairlock is glad for the threat from Tayshrin, taking this as a sign that he is getting somewhere in the conversation. He asks 2 questions. Why only 3 other high mages? Why didn't they perform this attack 2 years ago? Dujek steps in and provides tactical insight into why this attack makes sense now. The North campaign has gone sour in Black Dog Forest, and the Malazans are desperate. The Fifth Army is almost gone and will receive no reinforcements until next spring. The Tistandi and Black Dog could return at any moment. Dujek doesn't want to be defending two fronts. He notes Caladan Brood has proven adept at making the Malazans pay for their mistakes. At the mention of Caladan Brood's name, Khalat's memory is jarred, and he suddenly thinks he has heard the name before. Tattersail also thinks to herself that the name sounds familiar in an old way, perhaps from a legend or ancient poem. Taishran lashes out and says the need for justification has passed, saying the Empress has commanded and we must obey. Hairlock has a comment about him and Taishran playing cat and mouse in Erin, confirming that Hairlock is indeed from Seven Cities, because Erin is the Malazan capital in Seven Cities.
Right.
Now.
Yeah.
Hairlock continues on to tell Taishran needs to lay everything out for the High Fist, confirming his suspicions.
I just love how so much of this, I mean, just in this little bit that we've seen in this book, how much he's shown us of the world and the peoples just in these couple chapters. You know, it hints at such depth that we will cover in later books. But it just blows me away how much he has pre-thought stuff out on these things. You know, I love the little like the detail of him spitting this, because that we bring that up later, because that's one of those things that catches fire through the whole Bridge Burners group. They all spit on the floor every time they hear it. It's like it's all Seven Cities. I love it. Love it.
Man, that's my favorite continent in the series. I just love the people from there, the stories that take place there. Yeah. Deadhouse Gates takes place in Seven Cities. That's my favorite of the 10 books. Not taking away for anything from the other ones, but the desert has always spoken to me. So I was really taken by that. Yeah.
And it gets me too. Like I said, the only reason I picked this as my favorite is because it's what you turned me on to this series. And this is the book that I started with. But Deadhouse Gates is, man, it is hard to sit down and pick a favorite, but you know, that is Deadhouse Gates. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm going to love on it as much as I love on this one. When we get to it.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to point out a couple of details here after Hairlock and Taishran are going at it with each other. Hairlock was among the sorcerers that fought against the Malazans in Seven City. This was before Erin fell, and the Holy Falad were scattered. Provided with the choice of death or service to new masters, he chose the latter. The Holy Falad were a group that ruled Seven Cities prior to the Malazan conquest. Tattersail is watching the interactions between Taishran and Hairlock and sees that Hairlock knows something. She also thinks about how Hairlock was attached to the cadre in the second in Seven Cities and was there when Dasim Ultor was betrayed and murdered. That name gets me every time.
I do. I love it.
Dasim Ultor.
Dasim Ultor.
Yeah.
Woo. First sword.
The first sword.
First sword, baby.
I was a first sword for about 5 minutes.
Hey, that's 5 minutes longer than I was. So I'm pretty jealous on that. So
before I had to abdicate. See episode 1 for details.
Yes.
Dujek again tries to get the conversation on track, stating, "All right, we've got work to do. Let's get at it." Tattersail thinks about One Arm's way with words and how he is the greatest military mind left in the Empire. Hairlock's suspicions that Dujek is being betrayed make Tattersail think of a quote by Khalat regarding the Second Army. "We are a bent bow, and beware the Empire when it breaks. Seven Cities soldiery, the closeted ghosts of the conquered but unconquerable." Presumably, many of the Second soldiers are now from Seven Cities, given the ranks of the army needed to be replenished after they conquered Seven Cities. You know, Seven Cities wasn't conquered that long ago, and these soldiers still remember life before the Empire.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
You better hope you put the fear on them, because they may hold. We know these folks hold a grudge.
Oh, yeah. Khalat again asks for a transfer. Dujek tells him later, paperwork is a nightmare when you only have one arm.
I love that line. That's another great Dujek one. That's just amazing.
Yeah.
I wish we could have got to know Khalat better. I love that remark. I want that transfer now, please.
As Dujek is about to say something else, Khalat remembers the name Anomandaris. Hairlock knows that name. He asks Taishran again, "Only 3 high mages?" Tattersail remembers the poem now. Anomandaris by Fisher Keltath. She and Khalat recite a portion of the poem. "Caladan Brood, the men-hired one. Winter bearing. borrowed and sorrowless, in a tomb bereaved of words, and in his hands that have crushed anvils, the hammer of his song, he lives asleep, so give silent warning to all, wake him not, wake him not. It's very foreboding.
Yes, very foreboding.
Tattersail says he's awake, it seems. And not really, but I can't talk about it.
Right.
Dujek notes the poem isn't about Caladan Brood, given the name. Tattersail tells him the poem is mostly about Brood's companion. Hairlock steps in, speaking of the companion. Anamander Rake, lord of the Tist Andi, who are the souls of starless night. Rake, the mane of chaos. That's who the moon's lord is, and you're pitting 4 high mages in a single cadre against him. Tayshrin is sweating a bit now. He justifies this decision to attack by stating the Tist Andi are different from humans. They are predictable if you know them. They have no cause of their own, moving from one human drama to the next. That seems like a really sad way to live.
Yeah.
And is that what immortality causes? You live so long, you've seen it all, you don't really have much to do.
You know, especially in this world, I don't know if this is something that we want to get into here a whole lot, but in a lot of other fantasy books, all these immortals are moaning about being like 1,000 or 2 years old. And that's a long time for us to imagine. But we know for a fact that Rake's what, a couple 100,000, 3, 4, 500,000 years old. I mean, he's 500,000 years old, maybe.
Yeah.
That's old. Yeah, that would get bored.
Mm-hmm.
That would be hard. I mean,
Yeah.
what's new and exciting? You've seen humanity fight since the dawn of humanity. I mean, it's like I don't know what draws them in. I mean, I don't know if it's his sense of justice or just trying to break the boredom.
Yeah, we can't really talk too much about him yet.
Yeah.
Maybe later in this book a little bit.
Yeah.
We can get further into kind of some of my views on what's going on there.
Okay.
But Erikson was saying that interview that I looked up to get a better understanding of how he was pronouncing Malazan. He was talking about how he didn't even attempt to get into the mindset of someone that had been alive this long.
I get it.
So he kept his distance from Anamander Rake.
Yeah, I get it. That's why all the elders that we'll talk about later, I can see why he'd keep his distance. Because how do you write something like that? I mean,
yeah,
that's hard.
Yeah. Tayshrin is making a calculated move, trying to call out Anamander Rake's bluff that he will engage the Malazans if challenged. One of the High Mages, Bellerdan, has gone through some documents found on Genebacus from a book called Gothos Folly. Apparently there was some information in there that bolstered Tayshrin's view that Anamander would retreat if challenged. Tattersail has a knot of fear swirling in her stomach. You've condemned us to death if your gamble proves wrong. Not just us, High Mage, all of One Arm's host. Tayshrin pulls the typical BS move, pushing the responsibility up the command chain. Empress Lysine's orders. He then tells the cadre their colleagues are arriving by Warren. They will discuss positioning when they get here. He then dismisses the meeting. Tattersail and One Arm are looking at each other, and Tattersail is unable to meet his gaze. She can see the look of abandonment in his eyes. She judges herself very harshly here, calling herself a coward. Dujek then dismisses the cadre, ending with, "Prepare your warrants, cadre. As usual, always an even trade." What a way to end that scene.
Right. Well,
the Battle of Pale.
In the book, this is some of the stuff that always stands out to me. This is where when I think of reading this series, this is where the book always starts for me, pretty much. This is where I see it. This is where the book starts. I mean, really, because everything else is kind of, we've been preparing for this, and this is just an introduction. Now we're going to get into it, and we're going to see how this series really works.
Yeah. I do very specifically remember the first time I read this, I was very confused about what was happening here.
Right.
It was a very chaotic scene.
Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm. As battles tend to be.
As they are, yes. Very messy and hard to tell what's going on.
Yeah. We begin the scene with the positioning of the mages on the battlefield. They are arranged on 3 separate hills, Tayshrin in the front, almost in the shadow of Moonspawn. The High Mages are positioned on the next hill back. They are named Nightchill, Bellerdan Skullcrusher, and Acaronis Firewielder. Nightchill is described as raven-haired, tall, and imperious. She also has a cruel streak the Emperor would drool over. Bellerdan Skullcrusher is Nightchill's lifelong companion, a Thelomen giant with formidable strength. We'll get more detail about the giant races later on. For now, we can simply take away that they are extremely large compared to the humans we are accustomed to seeing.
Yeah.
Acheronus is short and round, accompanied by a staff the size of a spear that is burning.
Now, I failed to mention this before in the battle in Dujek's tent that Hairlock mentions Acheronus, Nightchill, and Bellerdan, implying that these three are in a favored position to Tayshran.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of his...
Yeah.
He's calling them in specifically for this battle, right? They're kind of his favorites.
Yeah.
The cadre stand atop the hill most distant from Moonspawn. The 2nd and 6th armies have formed ranks in the plains outside the city, ready to march when the time comes. The Moranth legions line a ridge a quarter mile to the west. There is no wind, the sky overcast. The clouds thin but absolute. Tattersail and Callet have a conversation about the High Mages. Tattersail asks Hairlock if he was right about the 3 High Mages. He doesn't respond, giving her a grin instead. He's hiding something.
Yeah.
Do you think he knows this is going to be bad and he is grinning because he has already struck a deal with the bridge burners when he went to the tunnels?
Yeah, that's what my assumption is this he before he even goes here, he knows it's going to go sideways and he's covering his butt.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Tattersail and Callet talk about the High Mages, noting they have a lot of experience with this type of assault. They each used to command a company of mages when the Empire had enough of them. Their last campaign was in 7 cities roughly 9 years ago at this point. Do you think the Empire lost a lot of the mages when Laseen took the throne and outlawed magic, or simply is losing them in various Malazan conflicts over the years? At this point, the Malazan Empire is in its 105th year, so probably likely the latter, right?
And I'm assuming that there's a lot of the latter. We've lost a lot due to attrition, especially losing a bunch to Callan and Brood at the Tist and the Crimson Guard and this ongoing battle. And what I'm assuming that's what the ongoing mess in Black Dog is. Mm-hmm. And it's mentioned early in the book that the Tist Andi are particularly skilled at hunting out and killing mages.
Yes, we'll see some of that later.
Yeah.
In Darujhistan in this book.
Some more of my favorite imagery. I say this book is full of favorite imagery.
Oh, yeah. Acheronus cut his teeth in the Falari campaign. Now, Falar is made of a number of islands northeast of Quan Tali. This campaign likely was part of the Unification Wars.
Now, the Falarans, they're the red-haired ones, right? The red-haired bunch?
Yeah, I always kind of interpreted them as Scottish type.
The wild.
Northern people,
yes.
Seafaring, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's why they're so...
Well, I guess the Scottish aren't seafaring, but northern people,
Yeah. But there were some bad dudes, though.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Braveheart earlier, and I think, who's the guy that joins them and says, I'm helping you because they're on my island?
Well, he was Irish.
That's what he was. He was Irish. That's what it's not Scottish, but it's like on my island. This is like...
Yeah, that guy was cool.
Oh, I love him.
Acheronus took a beating during the 7 Cities campaign, left hanging without support when the Emperor disappeared and Laseen took the throne. There is a note that everything was chaotic during this time. The Talan Imas, and we'll describe them more in detail later, refused to acknowledge the Empress's rule and went out into the Jag Odan. They recently returned at half strength. Now, Jag Odan is on the 7 Cities continent and is to the west.
Okay.
Nightchill and Bellerdan were around even before Acheronus. Originally, they came down from Fen on the Quan mainland during the Unification Wars. Now, Fen is located on the Quan Tali mainland, sitting between the ice fields in the north and the Seti plains below them.
Okay.
They have been stationed in Nathalog for the last 6 years until Tayshran sent Bellerdan to Genabakis to research the documents, the ones that they found were part of Gothos' folly.
Yeah.
And his study of them, he found some information that contains something that contributed to the decision to attack Moonspawn. Now, Nathalog is an island on the northwest of Genabakis and is not far from Black Dog Forest.
Okay.
Tattersail notes how scared she is, particularly based on the look she saw on One Arm's face at the meeting with Tayshran. He knew what was about to happen and felt it like a dagger in his back. Hairlock interrupts Tattersail and Callet, telling them it's time to work. Moonspawn stops spinning as it has been doing for the last 3 years. Obviously, the unknown at this time, but suspected to be Animander Rake, Lord of Moonspawn, knows something is about to happen. Not fearing what is coming, he is preparing his defense. Tattersail shivers at this. He knows, she whispers, and Callet finished, and he's not running.
No.
Exactly what they didn't want.
Yeah.
Taishran launches his attack on Moonspawn. He holds his arms out to his sides, and a golden flame spans his hands. He launches it at Moonspawn, the flame growing as it approaches the target. This attack causes huge chunks of Moonspawn to fall, most likely burning, into the city of Pale itself and the Malazan army in the plain outside of Pale, causing untold damage to that city and the Malazan army.
Goodness.
Now, imagine heaps of flaming rock falling amongst the soldiers and into the city.
Oh,
absolutely horrific.
Absolutely. That's horrifying. That's a terrifying thought.
Mm-hmm.
Because these aren't, it's not little pebbles. These are boulders, house-sized things, right? Chunks of rock falling off and bigger.
Yeah. Now, the attack starts out, it's arm's width, right? But it grows as it travels.
Yeah.
So by the time it gets up there, it's huge.
Yeah.
We see for the first time birds known as great ravens fly from the underside of Moonspawn. We'll learn more about these birds later in the book, especially further in the series.
Yes.
We'll have more information about them. What we know now is they nest in the crevices on the underside of Moonspawn, and they're described as having 15-foot wingspans.
Goodness.
For reference, the California condor only has a 9.5-foot wingspan, and those are huge.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, and there are some condors in South America with a 15-foot wingspan. Now, a raven of this size would certainly be a sight to behold.
Yes.
Now, imagine thousands upon thousands of them.
That would be horrifying.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on there.
Hairlock comments, imagine a lord who's kept 30,000 great ravens well fed. That's crazy.
It is. Why does he know what these are? We know this because his warren is dark/Rashawn. I'm guessing that's all it is.
I'm not sure. Maybe it's some knowledge he's picked up in his studies over the years,
Could be.
Yeah. I can't really comment on how the great ravens came to be.
Right? Yeah.
Yet. We'll get to it. We finally see the Lord of Moonspawn, a Tist Andi. It is revealed at this time that this is Animander Rake. We finally get to see how old he is, approximately 100,000 years old. Probably significantly older, but that's the estimation.
Yeah.
Quote, Mane of Chaos, Animander Rake, Lord of the black-skinned Tist Andi, who has looked down upon 100,000 winters, who has tasted the blood of dragons, who leads the last of his kind, seated in the throne of sorrow, and a kingdom tragic and fey, a kingdom with no land to call its own. That's sad, man.
It is. It is sad. Especially what we know. I mean, that's hard because we know these people now.
Yeah.
Knowing what we know.
Animander Rake is holding his arms in the air. His long silver hair is blowing in the wind. He looks tiny compared to the backdrop of Moonspawn. Suddenly his power blooms. Tattersail is awed by the power that Rake unveils in his counterattack. To be able to feel the power at her distance to Rake is something worth noting.
Mm-hmm.
While Rake is channeling his power, 2 blue balls of fire race up to Moonspawn from the central hill, striking at the base of Moonspawn and rocking it. That's likely an attack from Acheronus, correct?
Yes, I think so.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Taishran launches another attack of golden flames. Rake's attack, a black, writhing wave that strikes the first hill, is so strong it drives Taishran to his knees. The hill around him is blighted, and the necrous power rolls down the hill, mowing down ranks of soldiers. The attack leaves the soldiers in rotting heaps on the ground. Tattersail's inner monologue, Kurald Ghislaine sorcery, elder magic, the breath of chaos. This is the first mention of Kurald Ghislaine.
Right.
Like we kind of described it already a little bit in talking about the magic earlier, but this is the first time it's mentioned in the book.
Yes. We're like we talked about, because we're coming at this battle differently than the book. We're going in order.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. At Tattersail's command, the mage cadre bring up their warrens. Tattersail raising Thir, the Warren of Light, Callet raising Makra. The book has a glossary at the back providing additional details about some of the warrens. Makra is not mentioned at all. I remember this being confusing to me the first time I read the books.
What's funny for me, on this read through, we've talked about this. I think the first time I really truly remember Makra sticking with me is when we are introduced to the Crimson Guard in the later books.
Yeah,
But
Midnight Tides is the
yes,
first
Midnight
time. Yeah.
Tides. Okay,
Mhm.
and this one I didn't remember that was Khaled's thing was Makra. I
Yeah.
was kind of surprised me when on this reread seeing that. I was like, oh, okay. I don't recall it.
That's why it stuck out to me, I think. It's
Yeah,
just because I knew what it was from later.
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Yeah. hmm So I went to the Malazan wiki and brought up a little description of Makra. So Makra is a warren also known as the Path of the Mind, and among the rarest warrens accessed by mortals. Makra-based magic is used to subtly manipulate and influence the minds of others, often through illusion. By making use of proclivities to cloud the mind or fill it with frightening shadows, the target's body could be made to react as if what it sensed was real. Basically, these aren't the droids you're looking for.
But these aren't the droids you're looking for with a fear of asking the question again. Kind of like,
okay.
it's like,
Yeah.
whoa, okay, please leave. Not move along. It's like, oh, okay, they want away from you at this point because their body's reacting to it. That's an odd one I hadn't thought about. It sells the illusion on a gut level, not just the mental level.
Okay, yeah. But what exactly is Khaled's contribution to this battle?
I could have no idea. What's funny, the one thing I heard Erikson himself is that when he played D&D, he was using a class called an illusionist. Now, I'm not familiar with this class. I'm old school, old school. Last time I really played it, it would have been your traditional, you had a fighter, maybe a paladin, a thief, and a magic user. That was kind of about the all of it. But and Erikson finds them to be the most powerful class, and I would really like to know his mind on that because I can see how it can be, but I need a guy like Erikson or Alan Moore to flesh out how can you use sorcery like that to, especially to affect. It would impact mortals, but someone like this elder, I would think it would do nothing because that's especially if he draws from the parent Warren of darkness, Mocker would be nothing to him, I would think. But maybe he's just trying to instill fear, into maybe he's trying to, put an aura of fear on him or something like that.
I guess there's a possibility that any magic can try to deflect any magic.
Yeah, maybe so. That's another thing. Is it magic versus magic or element versus element? Or the strength of the wielder. Is fire versus water a matter of strength, or is of the Warren versus the wielder, or what? I'm not really sure.
You do remember when Tattersail entered the tent, her eyes began to water because the power was anathema to her own. So there is a factor of the opposite school of magic having some adverse effect to someone, right?
Now, is that one of the Gardens of the Moonisms? Because I don't recall if I don't know if I recall this later on.
Yeah, I don't know.
But in video games, in the video game universe, this is, of course, what you're looking for. If you're fighting people with ice, then you need water or you need fire. If you're fighting water, you need electricity. So I don't know how he views that.
All right. Hairlock surrounded himself in his own mysterious source. We have Tattersail bringing up the Thea Warren. We have Khaled playing mind games, and then Hairlock is surrounding himself in his mysterious source.
Yep.
As we mentioned earlier, it's anathema to light, so likely Rashan, the current manifestation of dark available to humans, not to be confused with Kurald Ghislaine, which is true darkness and wielded by the Tistandi. Mage warfare is nothing like normal warfare. It appears to be way more devastating. The army doesn't even appear to have a chance to engage anyone. They're killed almost instantly. It's noted that rocks ripped through men like hot stones through snow.
Wow.
Yeah. Now we see why always an even trade is so important. The soldiers protect the mages so the mages can protect them. It's symbiotic if the mage gives a shit about the soldiers.
Right.
Hairlock and Nightshield, for example, probably wouldn't fall in the category of mages that would have this relationship with the army.
Right.
Right. Yeah. The sun becomes obscured by the amount of dust and smoke kicked up by the battle. Each strike from above throws large mounds of earth in the air. I envision this like the barrages in World War I with the artillery strikes.
Yeah.
Tattersail sees a wave of sorcery go through Hairlock's defenses, and Hairlock is cut in half. Tattersail is only able to attempt to defend herself. When the waves of sorcery hit her, she is forced to defend against its cold, screaming will. She becomes aware at this point that Khallet is attempting to shield her. She sees Khallet is looking elsewhere, toward the plain, where the rest of the mage cadre and army are. His eyes are filled with terror. Khallet is killed, turned to ash, by a blast of bright fire. The wash of crackling heat knocks Tattersail over on her side. So he wasn't killed by darkness.
Yeah.
That's suspicious.
It's very suspicious.
Mm-hmm. At this point, it is all Tattersail can do to not be killed by the sorcery erupting around her. Again, she realizes Khallet was not looking at Moonspawn, but faced right to the plain, and notes that Hairlock has been struck from the plain as well. Tattersail sees a Kenrila demon arise beneath Nightchill. The demon tears Nightchill to pieces and begins feeding on her before Bellerdan can get to her. Bellerdan rushes the demon, sustaining damage as the demon's talons rake his chest. He crushes the demon's skull with his bare hands.
Now, did he already have the name Skull Crusher, or did he get the name from that incident?
No, he already had it.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. But...
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just performed his signature move.
The Skull Crusher.
The tombstone.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Now, the Kenrila demon, we're given no explanation about this thing, right? So I'm going to add a little note from the wiki here. They're tall, thin, and extremely bony.
The Kenrila is their head taller than a person riding a horse.
That's pretty tall. Yeah. Their skin is black as chiseled basalt with sharp facial features. They possess protruding upper and lower canines that are silver in appearance. They use their knife-like talons as primary weapons. They are not mindless beasts, but rather intelligent. They feed on their fallen enemies. And silly side note here, but simply the mention of talons, I think of Napoleon Dynamite when he asks if the chickens have large talons when he's working on the chicken farm. Every time I hear talons now, I think of that.
I need to watch that movie. I've not seen that movie.
Oh, man, you'd love it.
I think I would. You have large talons.
Mm-hmm.
What was Big Red? Was that rooster that Kenny Powers had? In East Bound and Down, wasn't it Big Red?
I think so. Acheronus unleashed gouts of flame from his staff until Moonspawn almost disappeared in a ball of fire. That's a lot of fire because Moonspawn is huge.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what this was to look like?
Oh, that would be, it's awesome looking as well because I could see it in my mind's eye. Like, wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. Ethereal wings of ice close around him and freeze him in place. An instant later, he is crushed to dust. And I've never paid attention to this before because I read through this battle so quickly, but it's interesting that a school of magic that is anathema to him is used to kill him.
I never caught that before. So that kind of almost answers that question we were talking about. So it might be element versus element. And of course, anything that a human is using is the refined versus the masters of chaos. I mean, like people like the elder races, we know that their magic uses dwarfs our human ability to use the magic in this world because they're in touch with the primary source versus we're in touch with a secondary source.
Right. So who on this battlefield do you think commands ice?
The ice one, I would think that could be from dark because the cold of the dark is like an absolute zero type darkness for these people is the way I've taken it. These people exist in darkness and in cold, and they don't think about it.
So what's Nightchill do?
I don't know what she does because she's we've learned a few things about her, and it's from the things I have read has shown that there's always been a Nightchill. So I don't know if it's a reincarnated type individual or if this is the latest incarnation of her, but she's not young.
I guess. They never really say what her
we don't talk
magical powers are, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Okay. That's just the name kind of makes it seem like
maybe it was her because of what we know about because of the things that we find out later on that don't come up until later books about this particular battle because we are left in confusion for 2 books.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
before the answer of what really happened here is like answered. And we were both like, "What?" We didn't, okay, it's like it's a real surprise, you know.
Yeah. Magic reigns in an endless storm around Tayshrin. He is powerful enough to hold out against the onslaught of Animander Rake, which is incredibly
Yeah,
impressive.
very.
He is deflecting each of the attacks sent against him, and they are sent into the soldiers cowering in the plain below. Not so impressive.
Yeah, not impressed. Well, because he himself is coward because it's all he can do to just survive it,
Right.
you know. And again, that says something because he's human and he is standing alone against the son of darkness. But the fact that he's was able to withstand this archmage like that is impressive.
Yeah. The city of Pale is deluged by enormous cliffs of debris falling from Moonspawn, transforming the city into its own cauldron of death and chaos.
For some reason, that always brings something to mind. I'm reminded of a phrase about icebergs calving off chunks of ice, you know, chunks as large as houses or as buildings. I'm imagining.
Oh, but yeah, huge.
Yeah. Just multiple, you know, millions of tons of rock are just falling into this city, more effective than any artillery.
Oh, yeah. Thus, the battle ends.
What a battle. And that was quick. That's such a short page turner. But I mean, I'm like you. The first time I read that, first 2 times I read it, I blasted through it so quick. It's nice to take our time and look at it.
Yeah, when you look for the specific detail, I definitely see a lot more because I have a tendency to read very quickly in those exciting moments like that. Just, oh man, God, you know, it's happening so fast. So
that's me.
Yeah, it was good to read it a little bit slower.
Yeah,
more detail.
And that's what I've been enjoying on our read through is taking our time because I'm like you. I do the same. I get excited and I just want to ingest it all at once and start again.
Moonspawn is billowing smoke and is on fire in a dozen places. It begins to retreat. Its revolutions unsteady and leaning to one side, moving south towards the Talon Mountains. Tattersail is surveying the carnage. She sees the remnants of soldiers that had sought her protection on her hill during the battle. Now all that remain of them is heaped armor. Something comes to her mind. Always an even trade, sorceress. She fights back a sob. The scope of carnage is awesome, and I imagine quite terrifying in the amount of dead left on the field of battle.
How long do you think that battle lasted? 20 minutes even?
Man, it could have been minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's so quick when you read that scene. I mean, it didn't take you 2 or 3 minutes to get through that scene when you read it. Yeah. It's just so dense.
We never get a sense of the passage of time for this. You know, it's just kind of each action that's happening.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and some of the stuff happens very quickly as well.
Absolutely. Real fast, yeah.
Tayshrin is down but alive. Some soldiers carry him away. The Moranth Legion is entering the city. Bellardan is wailing, picking up the pieces of Night Chill. Tattersail thinks to herself that Pale has fallen. The price was 1 arm's host and 4 mages. That's a hefty toll.
A hefty toll.
She has suspicions that the scene on the battlefield is not played out yet, and she waits around. There is a deeper silence on the battlefield. The sorcery unleashed has frayed the fabric between worlds, and the warrens of chaos now feel close enough to touch. This puts some framework on the structure of warrens. They are places unto themselves, and in between lies the warren of chaos. You can envision it like a vascular system in a way.
Yeah.
The veins and arteries are the warrens.
Absolutely.
Thinking her emotions have been spent, she is surprised when she looks at the Legion of Moranth entering the city, and a look of hatred slips into her eyes. There has been enough death on this day. Quote, Shedunul's mercy, hasn't there been enough? Another invocation of a god's name, Shedunul, the Lady of Health, also known as Soliel.
So I'm guessing that's where the term Denal is derived from her name.
I did some research, and there was no direct connection between the two.
Seriously?
Actually,
okay.
From what I could find. Yeah, surprisingly. Okay. That is a sound theory, but
yeah.
I could not find a connection.
I just assumed that she was the goddess or the throne holder or whatever the Warren of Denal is.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Thanks.
The Moranth had a deal with the Empire. They are allowed 1 hour of slaughter upon the fall of Pale. There is a long history between the Moranth peoples and the city of Pale. This is an act of retribution. This is likely one of the concessions the Malazans had to give the Moranth to gain their assistance on Genabacchus and turn the tides against the free cities.
Yeah, that would be my guess.
A dozen fires rage unchecked in the city in the distance. As Tattersail is surveying the carnage, a voice to her left says, "They're coming." It's Hairlock. The fact that Hairlock is alive after having been literally cut in half shows how strong his will to live is. And his thirst for vengeance, I guess.
Yeah.
He is missing his body from the hips down. The gaping cavity of his chest is open, spilled fluids drying amongst the entrails. There is a faint penumbra of sorcery surrounding him, revealing his efforts to stay alive. He says again that they're coming and asks if she sees them yet. Tattersail sees 4 soldiers approaching and asks Hairlock who they are. He doesn't answer her. Hairlock is looking at her very intently, focusing as he tries to stay alive. Tattersail quips, "Thought you'd take a wave through the gut, huh? Well, I suppose that's one way to get shipped out of here." Hairlock tells her that the tough facade ill suits her. There is risk in knowing too much, and she should be glad he spared her. He says, "Think nice thoughts. The flesh fades." His sudden humanity surprises her.
If I'm not mistaken, is this the only decent thing that we will ever hear him say?
Yeah, it's very off-brand for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tattersail agrees that the time for facades is over and tells him she never liked him, but she'd never question his courage.
Right.
Also, that even Taishren's arts aren't enough to heal him in his current state. He laughs and says, "Dear girl, your naivete never fails to charm me." This hurts Tattersail. She thinks he's playing one last joke on her, but he maintains that she misunderstands. She can't see how it's possible to survive this situation, and he tells her he has arranged a back door and that it's coming to them right now. The bridge burners arrive on the scene.
Mm-hmm. Do we have a fanfare with this one? I need a fanfare. Sorry.
Okay, you want me to edit one in?
No, if you want to, that'd be great. Yeah, put a little fanfare. The bridge burners. You don't
it's kind of a dark moment.
It is. It is. Sorry.
Whiskey Jack, Kalam, Quick Ben, and Sorry make up the group. Tattersail immediately notes that something is not right with Sorry. Young, pretty as an icicle, and just as warm to the touch. Whiskey Jack asks Quick Ben if Tattersail is the one they have the deal with, and Quick Ben tells him it's Hairlock. As Kalam walks by Tattersail, she notes that despite his size, he glides over the ground. He is completely ignoring her, which pisses her off. I'm gonna have to warn everybody in advance. Kalam is my favorite character, so just know that I'm gonna be singing his praises no matter what he's doing. That's just the way it's gonna be.
I am a fan of Kalam, but I am a fan of Kalam and Quick Ben as a couple. I mean, they're not a couple, but as a couple of friends, those two guys, they are some of my favorites.
As a team.
Yes, they're the best team, I think.
As a team up.
Yes. Yes, they're the best team up.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tattersail is awed by the power that Quick Ben unveils as he passes by her. She realizes he's a mage. She asks who they are, and they tell her 9th Squad from the 2nd Army. She knows that unit. She realizes who she's talking to. The Bridge Burners. Whiskey Jack being their sergeant. Note his rank now from commander in the prologue to sergeant. That's quite the drop.
Yes, it is.
He flinches at the mention of his name. When she says she's heard of them, Whiskey Jack tells her it doesn't matter. Thinking to herself, Tattersail remembers that the Bridge Burners were the Emperor's elites, his favorites. In the 9 years since Lasine took the throne, they have been pushed into every rat's nest the Empire could find, which has greatly diminished their numbers. They now only made up a single undermanned division. Remember how Surly referred to Whiskey Jack's soldiers as seditious in the prologue?
Yes.
I wanted to come back to this. You can see the after effects of her viewpoint on them. Got them worn down to nothing, practically.
Yes.
Stories have emerged. Names of the survivors. Sergeants mostly. Deteran, Antsy, Spindle, Whiskey Jack.
Spindle is an interesting one for me because, he's interesting, period, but he becomes interesting also because he is in the new series that Erikson is doing about Karsa. And so it's good to see a familiar face, and it's Spindle.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, cool. We got somebody. We got a couple people, but Spindle's such an interesting character anyhow.
Yeah.
He's not a good guy. He's an interest. I love how these people are villainous and good. They're like real people. That's part of what makes them good. A good character is they're like us. They make good decisions. They make bad decisions. And that's what I love about some of these people. Sometimes they start off villainous and they become good, and sometimes they start off good and become villainous.
They're not all just goody two-shoes people, right? Some of them are outright criminals in the past. Some of them are cantankerous, and curmudgeonly,
termagantly, and
a number of termagants in there. I'm never gonna let that word go now. Thank you for teaching that to me. Tattersall thinks to herself, names heavy with glory and bitter with cynicism that every army feeds on.
Oh.
These are the legendary names of the bridge burners that have been making their rounds through the ranks. Whiskey Jack is surveying the devastation. He realizes something and asks Tattersall if she's the last of the cadre left. She tells him the last left standing, and mostly by luck. Tattersall asks about Quick Ben, whether he is a mage. Tattersall is scared by what she sees in Quick Ben and Kalam, and especially sorry.
Yeah.
Whiskey Jack confirms and says his name is Quick Ben. Tattersall says, not the one he was born with. Whiskey Jack again confirms. Tattersall thinks he's being very cagey.
Yes.
Not very talkative.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Tattersall thinks she should know of Quick Ben, that his power would get noticed. He's no novice. Whiskey Jack again confirms that he isn't a novice. Tattersall gets frustrated with the lack of information she's getting from Whiskey Jack. She wants an explanation about what's happening. Whiskey Jack notes not much by the looks of it and raises his voice and gets Quick Ben's attention.
What's funny, I believe when I was listening to that book or the other day, it's like, not much by the looks of it. It's like, what's going on? Or he's saying that real loud to make him look bad. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, trying to hustle him along.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Quick Ben tells Whiskey Jack they're doing some last-minute negotiations.
I'm always curious about these last-minute negotiations. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of at their mercy right now.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, so I wonder what they're getting out of him.
I am curious.
Tattersall moves her attention to Sari. Sari, who is looking at the Moranth entering the city, senses the attention and whips her head around, looking at Tattersall. Tattersall is startled by the expression in Sari's eyes and quickly looks away. She asks Whiskey Jack if this is all that's left of his squad. Quote, 2 desert marauders and a blood-hungry recruit. Whiskey Jack responds that he has 7 left, and Tattersall asks about this morning. He says 15. Tattersall thinks something is wrong. Feeling the need to say something, she says, better than most. Still, I'm sure they were good men, the ones you lost. His response, good at dying.
Wow.
Man. The words shock Tattersall. She isn't ready to deal with this, not after what she has been through. She isn't ready for Whiskey Jack, a man she thinks is buckling under the weight of his own legend. He really evokes a lot of sadness in Tattersall. She is amazed that he can even shoulder the burden he's under.
That says a lot.
Yeah. She's thinking to herself that the bridge burners haven't been seen much in the last 3 years since they were underground in the tunnels, attempting to undermine the city's walls. A waste of time given the geology of the region, as we noted in Dujak's tent earlier. Then it hits her. The bridge burners were in the tunnels during the battle. She asks him if he's been in the tunnels since this morning, to which he responds, what tunnels? He walks past her. That gets me.
Yeah, it does.
Tattersall reaches out and grabs his arm. She explains that failure in protecting those under them is something they share and that she is sorry. Whiskey Jack tells her not to be sorry. Regret is not something they can afford. He then walks over to Quick Ben and Kalam. Sari speaks from immediately behind her. Now that she can get a better look at her, Tattersall notes she is young, 15 at best, except for her eyes, which look ancient with all emotion eroded away. Sari tells her the bridge burners numbered 1,400 that morning. Tattersall asks how many now, and Sari shrugs carelessly, stating, now only 30, maybe 35 remain.
Goodness.
4 of the 5 tunnels collapsed.
Goodness.
Now, we're shown this lack of integration into the bridge burners. No attachment to any of them, even though she's been stationed with them for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Also, that loss of life, man, that is catastrophic.
Yeah, that's just, very devastating.
Sari says Fiddler and Hedge. That's the first time Hedge is being mentioned in the story.
Love Hedge.
Tried to round up some help to rescue any survivors and were stopped by Taishrin. So now it's starting to come together. The Empress has been working on eliminating this seditious force since she took the throne, and 9 years later, she has nearly succeeded.
Right?
Tattersail asks why Tayshrin would do that, and Sari frowns as if disappointed and walks away. Do you think Sari was fishing for complicity from Tattersail in the betrayal, and she's disappointed when she doesn't get too exact revenge on her?
I'm not really sure on that. She may have just been trying to get a read on Tattersail to see if she, like you said, like she knew anything. But I think Sari's referring specifically to the idea of Fiddler Hedge being stopped from attempting to dig out any of the bridge burners by Tayshrin.
Mm-hmm. I wonder why she looks disappointed.
You may be right in that fact that she may just be disappointed in the fact that she didn't get to kill Tattersail. It could be that simple because we know, of course, we know more about Sari than the average reader does at this point. So
Yeah.
It could very well be from that in particular.
Yeah.
She could have been looking for her to be complicit.
Okay. Tattersail recognizes the fact that Sari wanted to hear another answer from her as Sari walks away, and she feels she dodged that bullet, whether it was intentional or not. Tayshrin isn't making any friends. The failure of the day lies squarely at Tayshrin's feet, and she looks to where Moonspawn used to hang above Pale and thinks that Rake had warned them. Was it a failure, though? What do you think?
I don't know. Knowing what we know about the series, because like we've told folks, we've read the series. We're just starting at book 1, but I feel like she does not get enough credit for how smart of a leader she actually is, because she proves herself to me multiple times that she's a good tactician.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is a failure in her eyes or not. Now we know it's a failure from our people on the ground's eyes, because they watched almost everyone they know brutally slaughtered in a matter of minutes, and to them it looks like they lost. Almost. They didn't, because Moonspawn retreats and the Maranthe are going in town, so they know they've won, but what did we really win?
Well, from my perspective, the bridge burners are almost gone.
Yeah,
and then
right.
Dujak's army, those getting a little uppity.
Yeah. You're right.
You know?
You are very right.
They're pretty much decimated.
Yeah. We're down to 45 guys, 35 guys. and Dujak, so that's a bad deal.
Another question. How do you feel that Rake warned them? Simply by his presence?
Rake warned whom?
Tattersail says to herself that Rake had warned them.
Oh, okay. Oh, I think the presence of Moonspawn is a pretty big warning in and of itself.
Okay. Just by being there.
Yeah,
okay.
Just by being there. Apparently, and I'm assuming that's what Rake himself was trying to attend, because when they found out it was so few people on there, that's when they launched the attack.
Okay. Here's a quote from the book that I feel is important in fleshing out the relationship of a mage and their warren. The warrens of magic dwelt in the beyond. Find the gate and nudge it open a crack. What leaks out is yours to shape. With these words, a young woman set out on the path to sorcery. Open yourself to the warren that comes to you, that finds you. Draw forth its power, as much as your body and soul are capable of containing. But remember, when the body fails, the gate closes. End quote. There are limits to what a mage can draw at any time. You can only draw so much power before it'll destroy your body.
Yeah.
Mages also need time to rest after the reserves have been depleted. It's almost like energy in your body when you exercise.
Okay.
And similar to D&D in a way, where you have a certain number of spells per day that you can kind of use.
Right.
Kind of like that.
Yeah, it does take its toll.
Yeah. Tattersail feels an unusually strong power, something she has only read about. She feels that something nasty and ugly and perhaps godlike had come to the hilltop where she is located with the bridge burners. Power only an ascendant would have. She dismisses it due to her exhaustion. She decides it is not a god, but something else.
Do you believe that it's somebody on the field, or do you believe it's something else?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you believe it's quick?
Yeah, okay. Probably.
That's what I'm thinking.
He's doing that ritual right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's interesting here is she actually suspects the girl, but notes she is only there half the time. It could be Quick Ben, but I'm not sure he's unleashed. Actually, to your question, it's not clear that Quick Ben has started anything yet. So maybe
that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
I don't know where it's.
Yeah. Is this just how their world feels? Is this maybe another moonism that it's like maybe that we've been close with all the death? I'm curious, basically Hood would have been there on his side of the fence pulling in the dead. So maybe that's what they're talking about.
I don't
know.
Yeah. Quick Ben has something he shows to Whiskey Jack, almost as if he's asking for approval. It's an oblong object wrapped in hides. Tattersail sees tension between Whiskey Jack and Quick Ben. Whiskey Jack shoots Tattersail a glance before he tells Quick Ben to proceed, then walks off. Quick Ben tells Kalam to get ready, and Kalam sits back on his haunches with his hands in his sleeves. He's getting ready in case something goes bad with this ritual, and he knows exactly what's expected from him. He and Quick Ben have this kind of dynamic, like friends that have known each other for a really long time.
Yeah. I have a note later about them finishing each other's sentences and conversations. I think that's in chapter 3.
Yeah, I think so.
They do that a lot. They've been together a while.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also, the bond of brothers in wartime also. This is what I think that's what a lot of this love is for these fellas.
Mm-hmm.
Why I tend to like them is because there are soldiers.
Right. And we get to go through a lot of their experiences with them.
Yeah.
Kalam's reaction to Quick Ben's command surprises Tattersail. The position he takes seems odd to her. Tattersail notices Quick Ben is performing some sort of sorcery on Hairlock. It's twisted and dark, yet almost familiar. Tattersail recognizes one of the words of power as Denul, but not quite, as if Quick Ben has twisted it somehow. And Denul, again, is the Warren of Healing. Billy, you mentioned that earlier.
Okay.
Tattersail is again struck by how dangerous Kalam appears to be, coiled like a snake waiting to strike. She thinks it wouldn't take much to set him off. Any careless move toward Quick Ben or Hairlock might do it. His adeptness at killing is apparent to her. He has exceeded the art of soldiery and has progressed to the next level in the art of murder. She thinks, not just a job anymore. This man likes it. And I don't know if I agree with that. Maybe it's just Tattersail's assessment of Kalam and not an objective description of the character by the author. I mean, count me biased again, but I don't feel that he ever really took pleasure in the killing.
I don't think he took. I don't think he took pleasure. I think that she's just noticing. I think that this is based on her initial reaction to him when when she has that initial like, "Whoa, this guy he looks like a big burly guy, but he's real smooth, and he's more than he appears to be." And I think that's just what that's based on. Because I'm like you, I don't know. I think he takes a particular pride in a job well done, but I don't think he's particularly happy that this is his jam.
Right.
He's just good at it. Some folks are good at it.
Mm-hmm. Quick Ben lays the hide-wrapped object on top of Hairlock's body. I'll quote the book here. Quick Ben resumed his chaining words, this time over the object, which he now set down beside Hairlock. She watched as enwreathing power enveloped the wrapped object, watched in growing apprehension as the mage traced his long fingers along the hide's seams. The energy trickled from him with absolute control. He was her superior in the lore. He had opened a warren she didn't even recognize. Now we're introduced to the fact that some mages can access multiple warrens. Yeah. Quick Ben is the first confirmed in the books.
Yeah.
Now, she is 219 years old, and she doesn't recognize this warren. That's pretty impressive.
It's very impressive.
His use of it. She steps back, whispering, "Who are you people?" Hairlock says, "Lost arts, Sail. What you're about to see hasn't been done in 1,000 years." He tells her to think back, that he and Callet were not struck down from above, but from the ground. So the attack on him was not from Rake, but someone else. Tattersail thinks back to the battle. Rake was indiscriminate. The attack on Hairlock and Callet was aimed from the ground. She asks why Tatron would do that. Hairlock points to Tattersail and tells Quick Ben to use her. He'll take the chance. Tattersail begins piecing things together regarding the ritual. Dujek sent Hairlock into the tunnels, and he struck some type of deal with the bridge burners. She is scared, demanding an explanation for what is happening. Hairlock tells her, "You're not blind, woman." Quick Ben continues the ritual.
I guess he's probably trying to save Hairlock, but we're not shown what yet. But
Quick Ben tells them to be quiet and continues. Quoting again, he laid down the object on the wizard's ravaged chest, positioning it carefully so that it was centered lengthways along Hairlock's breastbone. The top end reached just under the man's chin, the bottom end extending a few inches beyond what was left of his torso. Webs of black energy spun incessantly over the hide's mottled surface. Quick Ben passed a hand over the object, and the web spread outward. The glittering black threads traced a chaotic pattern that insinuated Hairlock's entire body over flesh and through it, the pattern ever changing, the changes coming faster and faster. Hairlock jerked, his eyes bulging, then fell back. A breath escaped his lungs in a slow, steady hiss. When it ceased with a wet gurgle, he did not draw another. He dies. Quick Ben looks at Whiskey Jack as soon as the ritual is done. Whiskey Jack's expression is unreadable. Tattersail thinks the ritual failed.
Now, this in particular, I use this scene, the Battle of Pale, and this stuff with Hairlock right here to try and sell my friends to read it, because I don't know why, but this was always such a impactful scene for me. This is where it really drew me in. Like I said, the first couple of chapters are good, but this is where you really knew you were reading something special when I first read it. I mean,
yeah,
something about this, it was like, I'm reading something I've never read before. So much fantasy has been there, done that. And this was like again, thank you, because that's when I realized this is something special. There's something different here.
I'm glad you joined me on that journey.
Yes, me too. Me too.
Kalam gives the wrapped item to Tattersail. She is told to take it back to her tent and unwrap it there. Most of all, she is not to let Taishran see or know about it. Tattersail is resistant to accepting the object since she doesn't know what it is. Whatever it is, she doesn't like it. Sari says, I don't know what you've done, wizard. I felt you keeping me away. That was unkind.
What? That's not good. That scares me,
Yeah. And based on what I can see, Quick Ben is masking his true self from Sari, probably using one of his warrens.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Quick Ben's expression is glacial when looking at Sari. He has a scared look in his eyes. He's scared of her.
Yeah.
Whiskey Jack tells Sari, you got something to say about this recruit?
Talk about your testicular fortitude there.
Yeah.
I love Whiskey Jack, man. What a great guy.
That's the chain of command.
Yeah, chain of command, baby.
Still calling her a recruit like 2 years later, 3 years later.
She's still a kid.
It was 2 years later, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sari looks at Whiskey Jack, shrugs, then walks away. Kalam tells Tattersail that they need answers, and answers aren't easily attained. Taishran killed her squad, and most of the bridge burners have been killed. They need to find out why. He asks if Tattersail is willing to pay the price. Tattersail accepts the object from Kalam and says she wants to see Taishran get what he deserves. Kalam says, then we are in agreement. This is where it starts.
And I find that very important, because this is where it all starts. All is prologue up to here, for sure.
Yep. Tattersail walks away and catches Sari's glance as she does. She feels a chill and asks her name. Tattersail is not surprised by the name. She says, it figures. After Tattersail has left the bridge burners, Whiskey Jack asks Quick Ben if it's done. Quick Ben's eyes dart to Sari before he nods a response to Whiskey Jack. Sari tells Quick Ben that you will draw unwanted attention to our squad. High Mage Taishran will notice. Whiskey Jack asks, unwarranted attention? What in Hood's name does that mean? Sari doesn't respond. Whiskey Jack thinks to what Fiddler had called Sari, an uncanny bitch. The fact that Quick Ben is scared of Sari gives Whiskey Jack pause in dealing with her.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what does he think? What does Quick Ben think Sari is?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm sure if she's scaring him with the stuff he's seen, I mean, who knows? Yeah. He knows enough to be cautious.
That's one of the reasons I love that man right there. Smart enough to remain cautious.
Yeah, he's slippery, that one. Whiskey Jack's attention goes back to Tattersail as she crosses the plain. The ravens feasting on the remnants of the soldiers are actively avoiding her. Whiskey Jack comments on them avoiding her, and Kalam notes it's not her, but the object she carries. Whiskey Jack doesn't like it. He thinks the whole plan stinks. Quick Ben notes someone was keeping the bridge burners down in those tunnels on purpose. Whiskey Jack turns his attention to the Moranth moving into the city. Quick Ben says he is surprised Dujek is allowing them to slaughter the citizens of Pale, and Whiskey Jack cuts him off, telling him Dujek knows his orders, and Taishran is sitting on his shoulder, figuratively. Kalam notes after an hour the Malazans get to go in and clean up the mess, but Whiskey Jack tells them they have new orders. This causes Quick Ben to have an outburst about someone trying to run them into the ground and whether Whiskey Jack still needs convincing. Whiskey Jack barks at Quick Ben, cutting him off. He gives them their orders to get resupplied and to gather the rest of the squad, then to gather at Dujak's tent in 1 hour. Quick Ben asks Whiskey Jack what he's going to do, and Whiskey Jack says he needs to think. The entire squad has been talking in his ear, and he needs to think about it. Whiskey Jack thinks someone in the Empire wants the bridge burners dead.
We will definitely get to that later.
I'd like to point this quote out. Had he been a religious man, Whiskey Jack would have let blood in Hood's bowl, calling upon the shades of his ancestors. Now, this shows some of the nature of worship in this world, providing blood to the gods in the hope of something in return.
Yeah. That's very similar to our own sacrificial past, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The section finishes with this. Pale was behind them now, the nightmare nothing but the taste of ashes in his mouth. Ahead lay their next destination, the legendary city of Darujistan. Whiskey Jack had a premonition that a new nightmare was about to begin.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. As Tattersail is making her way through the Malazan camp, this description of the state of the camp is provided. Tattersail threaded her way around the dazed survivors, stepping across puddles of blood in the wagon ruts, her eyes lingering on an obscene pile of amputated limbs outside the cutter tents. From the massive sprawl of the camp, followers' slum of tents and shelters came a wailing dirge, a broken chorus of thousands of voices, the sound a chilling reminder that war is always a thing of grief.
Yes.
Now, this paints quite the picture, not the details that a young noble boy like Genois Paran would hear about joining the military.
Oh.
Only the stories of glory probably get conveyed unless someone personally knows a veteran from the ranks that has seen battle.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Here is another dark thought. In some military headquarters back in the empire's capital of Unta, 3,000 leagues distant, an anonymous aide would paint a red stroke across the Second Army on the active list, and then write in fine script beside it, Pale, late winter, the 1163rd year of Burns' sleep. Thus would the death of 9,000 men and women be noted, and then forgotten. How cheap life must be to the leadership. Kind of makes you wonder if the Malazan Empire must expand to continue to get new meat for their grinders.
I'm sure it does. And I feel like a lot of this army stuff, minus the mages, in the books is similar to the Roman Empire. I think they grew in a similar fashion. And by conquering people, but also it's like, we'll conquer you, but we'll let you be free if you fight with us on our side kind of deal. And maybe they threw in citizenship, because I knew Roman citizenship was a big deal. Worth fighting for,
yes.
Particular. But I'm just making a guess, but I believe that's this seems very similar to that.
Okay, I mean, it sounds feasible. Tattersail is ruminating on the events and thinks to herself that she won't forget. The Bridgeburners have some troubling suspicions, and challenging Taystran appeals to her sense of outrage, but she knows she can't handle him one-on-one. She keeps thinking of the soldiers that were running to her for protection on the hill, coming back to always an even trade. Favors were traded in the second. It's what kept everyone alive. They had protected her in the past, and this time, in this mage war, the soldiers had run to her for protection and died for it. She concludes, being alive isn't the same as feeling good about it.
I believe I have that quote highlighted. And have we mentioned this previously, this quote? Because that's a great quote. I don't know if we've talked about that or not.
I don't think we have talked about that.
I like that saying, but being alive is the same as feeling good about it.
Yeah. Diving into it, it's like, what's the point if you're ashamed of yourself or having to deal with some really deep issue that you can't get past?
Agreed.
Like you stained your soul with something.
Yeah. I agree.
Kind of like the revenge.
Right.
Maybe that conversation kind of covered it a little bit, right?
Maybe it did.
Yeah. As Tattersail enters her tent, she is surveying her belongings. She thinks she doesn't have much for someone 219 years old. Again, the ages of the people in this series, particularly the mages, can be extremely long.
Do you think we kind of touched this earlier, but is it the stronger, the better that they are, the longer the life, maybe?
Or do you think it's the other way around? The older they get, the stronger they get.
It could be that too. I could definitely see that route, where it's like the longer.
That's how I take it.
That's a good idea. I think they would get stronger. Yeah. Cool.
Tattersail's eyes find the Fatid, the deck of dragons, and it calls to her. The deck of dragons can be interpreted similar to a tarot deck. There are different houses. In the Malazan world, they are in alignment with the Warrens. The deck can be used for divination. The cards in the deck have the ability to change in appearance, and the person performing the reading can see things in the cards. She thinks to herself that she has been avoiding the deck for months, and that perhaps Khalid's death may have been foretold. There's a piece of information here that I never picked up on before, revealed in this quote. You refused the deck once before, the night before Mock's throat was opened, the night before Dancer and the men who would one day rule an empire stole into your masters, your lover's hold. The reason I thought this was important is she was Mock's lover, and we began the series in Mock's hold on the island of Malaz. That was where the Malazan Empire was founded.
Yeah.
So she was around on that island before it was founded.
Yeah.
Being as old as she is. As she is lost in thought, Tattersall notices the package moving. This is the one that Kalam handed to her. Yeah, from the ritual. She opens it to reveal there is a marionette in the package, and it is alive. It is Hairlock. His soul actually now inhabits the marionette.
Like I said earlier, I said the first time I read this, I was tripping out over the idea of this, the soul shifting and all that stuff. And I, like I said, I've a couple people I've mentioned it to. One is a person you know, and I'm like, dude, it's like you're trying to tell them something, but it's like, how do you sell this idea about this crazy war and an insane puppet? and that's not even a big chunk of the story. That's just some of the minor bits of the story. It's like, and that's just not much of it. That's just how crazy this world is. I love it.
And the idea of soul shifting and the madness that comes with it is particularly horrifying to me. More so now that I've made the connection with an object in my own life. I need to put this anecdote in here.
Yes.
When I was growing up, my mom was given a gift. It was a doll about the size of Hairlock's marionette. It had a porcelain head and feet, and the body was made of cloth, and it looked like a jester. And I hate clowns already. Right. This thing always freaked me out. I called it clicky feet because when someone would make it pretend to walk, its porcelain feet would click on the surface that it was tapping on. Now, my mom ended up giving it to my grandma, and when we would go visit them, they would mess with me sometimes, having it sitting on top of the stairs and like moving it around randomly. It'd be in my bed and stuff tucked in. Dude. Oh my God. So my vision of the Hairlock marionette has always been closer to something like a Pinocchio style thing.
Well, that's what I think too when I think of marionettes as well.
Yes. But when I was doing some research about Hairlock to confirm his warrant, there was a piece of fan art on the page, and that damn thing looks just like this clicky feet doll, and I can't unsee it now. It's absolutely horrifying now that I see these two things together. Don't like it. I don't like it. And that doll, I think, is now back in my parents' house.
Okay. Well, you're
sitting on a shelf, watching me every time I go over there.
I get it. They're always waiting too. That's what's worse is he's always waiting for you. I've always had a fear of. It's like I've never been afraid of like Chucky. That stuff I found that stuff ridiculous. But the one that got me, did you ever? You've seen the old Twilight Zones, right? The old black and whites.
No, maybe one or two, but I haven't watched many of them.
It's Talking Tina, dude.
Okay.
Talking Tina is a doll that she's it's a little girl's doll, and Talking Tina is extremely sweet and kind to the little girl, and the little girl has a new stepdaddy, and it's Telly Savalas, and he's a real mean man. And I'm assuming we're to intimate that he's an abusive man by the way the mother and the daughter interact with him, and he hates this doll. And all the doll says is, "I'm Talking Tina, and I love you." And it says this to the girl, but the minute the girl leaves the room and the mom leaves the room, the doll moves the arms and the head turns and says, "I'm Talking Tina, and I don't like you." And he tries to destroy the doll, can't do it. And eventually he hears a noise in the middle of the night, and he's going down. Going downstairs. No, it's okay. He's walking downstairs barefooted, and Tina is on the stairs. He steps on her and falls to his death.
And that's okay.
I mean, it's less. At least she didn't stab him or something. I don't know. Or attack him with clicky feet. I mean, it was just it was just he had it coming. I mean, it was Telly Savalas. He was a jerk. He had it coming. Tina protected her master, the little girl. So her owner.
Okay. I can look at it through that lens, and I'll be all right.
Yes.
But I don't like the idea of these possessed
me neither.
dolls taking care of business. Don't like it.
Well, Hairlock's the ones that's the worst because he's out of his mind and powerful.
Yeah.
And powerful.
Back to the scene, Hairlock confirms his soul successfully shifted to the doll, and Tattersall notes that the art of soul shifting has been lost for centuries. To her knowledge, soul shifting was elder magic, Kurald Galain, or darkness. We covered that earlier. Tattersall thinks the Bridgeburners had a reputation for being a mean crowd, but using magic this close to chaos was either pure madness or desperation. Hairlock tells her to go to his tent and get his book. his attention turns to the deck. Tattersall uses the Fatid to perform a reading at Hairlock's insistence. First card, Night of Dark. Hairlock says the first house sets the course of the reading. It's Animander Rake. His image on the card has an interesting description. The face is blurred, his body naked, skin jet black. From the hips up, he has a human form, heavily muscled, holding aloft a black two-handed sword that trailed smoky, ethereal chains. His lower body is draconian, its armored scales black, paling to gray at the belly. I think this is where we begin to see where the title Mane of Chaos comes from.
I think it is. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But I had also, it's kind of funny, I did read that the term Mane of Chaos is dropped after this book.
Okay.
That's a Garden of the Moonism, apparently.
Okay.
As this is in the chaining words, was that another one?
I'm not familiar with all of the different things that were unique to this book that kind of were either retconned or changed later.
Yeah. Retcon. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that one.
Yeah, I mean, just changed after the fact.
No, I get it. I get it.
Second card, Opon, the two-faced jester of chance. Opon is made of two twins, the Lord and the Lady. We will see a lot of references to Opon in this series. It's important to understand the Lady's pull indicates good luck, while the Lord's push indicates bad luck. In this card, the Lady is on top of the card pulling. Where the Lord's hand reaches up in the gap between the Lord and Lady's hands, there is a spinning coin. One side has the Lady's face and the other the Lord's face.
And I'm like you. I like that idea of the push or the pull. And someone had put it like this in a forum. I'm not sure who said this, but, if you're standing on the edge of the cliff, the push is bad. The pull will save. So it's like, I love that idea. It's like, it's just the push or the pull. And they'll ask it a lot in this book. I think don't they? It's just the push or the pull.
Yeah, because you'll hear like the Lady's push to you, lad, or something like that. And you're like, I can't remember which one that was.
Yeah, exactly. Push is good. Pull is bad.
It would be the Lady's pull.
Push is bad.
The Lady's pull.
Pull is safe.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good way to remember it. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It is revealed that High House Dark and Chance, Opon, are involved.
It's also, my mind goes to the Empress's question to Perrin in the throne room 3 years earlier about what god put Perrin on the parapet with Whiskey Jack Fiddler and Lysine herself. And I think that kind of lets you know that is, I'm assuming that Opon had something to do with that. I'm guessing. Possibly.
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe, yeah, because yes, I we're going to cover something in the next couple chapters that makes me agree with you a little bit.
It shows who the players behind the players are in this book, and we know that Opon is one. So
it is at this point that Tattersall stops the reading, and Hairlock becomes enraged, threatening to kill her.
Now, was Hairlock always insane, or do you think it's already starting to show, or with him, his viciousness? Is that Seven Cities?
He always seemed just ready to be hostile at a moment's notice.
That's kind of what I'm thinking too.
Yeah, he's got a really despicable personality.
Yes, he does.
But I'm not sure if things have started to deteriorate due to the soul shifting yet, because he really hasn't gone Warren jumping yet.
That's true.
I think that's what really kind of
starts
pushing him over the edge. Yeah, because all that chaos that he's exposed to. Tattersall asks Hairlock if he hears anything after the reading, because she's still hearing the spinning coin. Hairlock can't hear anything. He just hears sounds of the camp. She leaves the tent without telling him anything. As she is walking to the command tent for Tayshran's debriefing, she thinks to herself that she'd never held Opon as an ally, and to do so would be sheer idiocy. The first house she uncovered in the reading had touched her hand ice cold, with violence and power run amok, but also a flavor of salvation. Opon's position in the reading left House Dark teetering on the edge, and that is why she held during the reading. She still is hearing the coin spinning as she enters the command tent. The future is not decided.
Good chapter.
And that is the end of chapter 2. A lot of excitement, a lot of information.
A lot of information. That, I think once you're able to suss out that bit, that helps you get through a lot of the upcoming stuff, I think. Being able to get through.
I think telling it in sequence really helps too, because that meeting in the tent gives us a little bit more information before the battle, right?
Agreed.
So that's pretty useful.
Yeah. Good.
All right, so for standout moments, that intro to Dujek with the soap on his beard, and damn the barber, love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah,
always.
Bringing Kalam and Quick Ben into the picture. Yep. You know, we've already met Whiskey Jack, but the intro to Kalam and Quick Ben is cool.
Yeah.
You know, we're starting to see some of their capabilities a little bit. When the cadre realizes who they're going up against during the debriefing, that sinister tone, you know, that was pretty cool.
That too. And I think that for me, I'm with you. Dujek coming in and just all the interaction between Callet and him. You know, you think it's easy doing paperwork when you only got one arm, or you know, paperwork's a nightmare when you only got one arm. Or when he makes the comment, I really like that. Really like that transfer. Now, this that kind of those small interactions that just show them as real people. You know, and of course, just everything about the battle. As much as we went and discussed it, I mean, it still gives me the chills when I talk about it with you. It's just so powerful.
Oh yeah,
it's powerful stuff.
The entire Moonspawn being a fireball, just the sheer size of that.
Yeah, amazing. Great episode though. I love that. Was a good
yeah, great episode. Yeah, good job tonight.
Yeah.
All right. See everybody next week.
We'll see y'all next week, guys. Thank y'all.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.